Hey, Blankenfer, I saw your video, and as I stated in my message to you, I did want to start an open dialogue about the Iraq War, because I do think it's important. But again, what I didn't touch on in my message to you was that cynnfull right-hand girl. I know she goes as right-hand girl on MySpace, but on YouTube it's cynnfull. But anyway, the reason, again, I replied to her video, just for those people who didn't know, was because I found it interesting that she would just constantly just repeat over and over and over again what kind of, the Republican side of the House and the Senate has been saying for a number of years with the President, with the White House, Tony Snow, Dick Cheney, a lot of them. What a lot of them have been saying for a number of, ever since the war started. Now, as you and I both can agree, the Iraq War now, right now, is not, I don't think, while it is somewhat progressive, yes, I will agree. First, let me say that I am a registered Democrat, but I do agree with you that the war is showing progress. I do agree with that. I am not one of those types of Democrats that says we should run away and pull out or anything like that. And honestly, I don't think a lot of Democrats are saying. I think that's a big misconception. There are a lot of Democrats that are saying that are saying the troops are dying, we're not getting enough, and everything like that. And while that's understandable and while that's okay, I don't think that's what the bulk of the Democrats are saying. I think that's the message that is implied by saying orchestrated pulling out, or whatever title is given. I think that the Iraq War is, again, it's progressing, but it's regressing in the sense that I think our presence is helping the Iraq people, but I'm sure you've seen those videos on YouTube that are kind of defaming the troops and things like that, with them waving water bottles in front of kids and things like that, and doing things that are sort of distasteful. I'm a big supporter of troops, American troops. I have a friend in the Marines, I have a friend in the Navy, I have a friend in the Air Force, all serving overseas, and all of them are serving overseas. I think 2 of them are serving in Iraq, and 1 of them is serving in Afghanistan. So I definitely support the troops. I don't want people to blast me and say I don't support troops or anything like that. But to the blind confer again, I think this open discussion about the Iraq War is respectable. I think we should have it, and I think it's necessary. I think that there are, as I touched in my message, there are a lot of people who either are not so much for the Iraq War or against it, but they are big anti-war, or they're just pro-troops. The Iraq War is working. The Iraq War is working. And you got to have like an in-between. And I think that's most Americans. I think most Americans are kind of they're believing the Iraq War is working, and we did topple a regime in Iraq, but we are losing morale across the world. And while you did touch on that Democrats aren't really doing a good job of fixing that, but that's only because they run the House and the Senate. I honestly think that the president, when he did make the speech about the coalition of the willing, I think by making such a bold statement like that, when at that time we had a lot of, he didn't necessarily need to make that statement when he made it. And then to continually make it, but without really saying it, and Tony Snow continually saying without really making it, doesn't really help the argument. Because again, anti-war, and a lot of Democrats are going to say, the war is, the coalition of the willing, basically, don't forget Poland is a very popular slogan on bumper stickers and things like that. I think the president said that. I'm not the biggest fan of what the president's decisions are, as far as, yes, he's a commander-in-chief and we're supposed to support him as Americans and things like that. But what I'm sort of against is the decisions that he's making, claiming that all Americans are in support of continuing the war in Iraq, because there are a lot of families that are drastically affected by this war. A lot of I'm sure you have friends and family that are that have served in previous wars, as I do, in this current war. It affects a lot of families, and I don't think these recurring terms and things like that. It's great for troop morale to show that troops are re-enlisting and doing good for their country and everything like that, and I'm a big proponent of that. But what I don't like to see is troops, or not even troops, but this war constantly dragging on, and we either hear the polar negative or the polar, or we hear somewhat of the polar positive. You touched on the Anbar province and the other province. I don't remember the exact name. And while they are showing progress, because you're right, they were demilitarized zones before before the U.S. and our allies moved in. You're right. They were demilitarized zones, and they weren't up to par. You're right. But at the same time, both of those locations, or in fact the Iraq War right now, the entire country right now as a whole, is kind of, in my estimation, and again, maybe you're right, maybe the Associated Press and Reuters and everything like that aren't the best sources, but there are other sources as well that I do read from, like the BBC and things like that. And what I found is that and what my friends have told me that are serving overseas is that the morale is either really good or really low. And when the troops overseas hear about what's going on at Walter Reed, which is right not up the street from me, but it's very close. When the troops overseas, when they see these videos that are demoralizing them, when they see users like 125 Smash constantly berating them. He just posted a video, in fact, I don't know if you've seen it. He just posted a video that kind of said all the troops are bad, no matter where they are, all the troops are bad, wars are bad, and everything like that. And that kind of really doesn't help the progress of the war either. Kind of just make a bold statement like that really doesn't help at all. And I honestly think that if the war drags on as it's going, I think that the reason that so many Democrats are saying we need to not so much systematically remove troops, but remove them in a sense that we're not looked like as police, because we're training the Iraqi police. And as cynnfull said in her video, she said that we're training the Iraq police, and we shouldn't look like the police for the police, because we're looked like what we're looked like to the average Iraqi citizen who are not shown in the videos that you see. We're looked to them like the Christian holy warriors. And while you said it's not good to tie it to religion, let's face it, the president is a devout Christian. Well, I'm a Christian as well. I'm a devout, I'm a devout Christian myself. I don't believe, this is my personal belief, I don't believe that any country, no leader should make their wartime decisions based on their religion. They should not do that whatsoever, whether they're Muslim, whether they're Buddhist, whether they're Christian, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Decisions should not be based on religion when it comes to war, because then whatever country you're fighting will make their decision based on religion, and then it will make the war even worse. And that's what's going on. That's why a lot of Middle Eastern countries are Iran and Pakistan and things like that. That's why there are so many different cells that are popping up, and people are saying, that we're, that the big anti-war people are saying that the terror cells are getting out of Iraq, but they're popping up in Iran and Pakistan. And again, I touched on in my previous video very briefly that there's other wars going on that we kind of started, or other conflicts that we started and we kind of never finished them. We kind of poked at them, and now we're kind of just leaving them alone and just focusing on the Iraq War and funding the Iraq War and everything like that. And while that's great, and we should fund the Iraq War and fund the troops and keep the money going, make sure they're well, make sure they have all of the protective armor they need, make sure they have enough bullets, make sure they have enough weapons and everything like that. We also We need to realize that there are other conflicts that we're not addressing, and honestly, they can be addressed with diplomacy. Obviously, Saddam Hussein, when he was living, was not going to allow diplomacy with the United States, even though there is documentation and video proof that in the past he has practiced diplomacy with the United States. He didn't practice that up until his death, but he did previously. Anyway, just to kind of finish this, there are different ways we can end this war, not necessarily with a full pullout, but we do need to recognize as a nation that we are looked like the extra police to the police we're training. And we should not be this big bully policing nations and saying, you do what we say or we're going to invade your country. And a lot of nations feel that way. There are a lot of nations who are backing up and saying, well, wait a second. I don't have anything to do with you because you're going around poking and prodding at every nation that doesn't necessarily agree with you, whether they have an agenda against us or not. We're just poking and prodding at things that not necessarily I'm saying we should or should not poke in, but we're poking in a lot of issues, and we need to first figure out whether it makes sense to poke and prod on those issues first. And that's my biggest concern. So you're welcome to reply to this. Keep the discussion going, and I want to know what you think.